It is good practice to think about the context of any data we come across before delving into the statistics, what it means, or what implications it may have. I always ask myself a few questions when I come across new data. Why would we want to measure this information? What might it be used for? Who is interested in it and why? Who measured it? How did they measure it? And how was the sample being collected? How is this data being presented to me? Where and when was it collected? The answers to these questions will inform our judgments about the data quality and whether or not it is useful and how it fits into the big picture. It is also of the utmost importance to understand the definitions of all terms being used. Sometimes the margin of error is big enough and/or the estimate is small enough that 0 is included as a possible value of the true population parameter. This often occurs when the population of interest is not very large, like many rural areas. This does not necessarily mean the data is useless, though. Take, for example, Broadwater County, Montana. The 2013 to 2017 American Community Survey 5-year estimates report that there are 31 children aged 0 to 6 living in poverty in Broadwater County. It also reports a margin of error of 34, so there might be as little as 0 children in poverty, or as many as 65. Does this mean that the data is useless? No. What if there were only 50 total children in Broadwater County? Then we could interpret this data to mean that there is probably a high rate of poverty for young children. Conversely, if there are 1,000 children total in Broadwater, we would have a very low rate of child poverty there. Our conclusions may also be affected by how surrounding counties are doing, or how Broadwater County is doing in comparison with other counties in the state, or even with other counties in the U.S. In reality, there are 335 young children in Broadwater County, which means that the early childhood poverty rate in that county is about half of Montana's statewide early childhood poverty rate. This has potential impacts for policy decisions. Broadwater County may not be the first county to receive funds for early childhood poverty programs in this case. It is also important, though, to keep in mind that for each family living in poverty with a young child in Broadwater County, it doesn't really matter how the poverty rate stacks up to other counties. Data points represent real people with real problems, and while data is often used to inform decisions and rank the urgency of need by geographical location, a good researcher keeps in mind that each data point represents a human being. Depending on how data is presented or examined, different conclusions may be logically drawn. A high rate of poverty may not translate to the most urgent need if a neighboring county with a low poverty rate has 100 times more people in poverty. Data can be tricky, and it is always best to think critically about what you are seeing. Make sure you understand the definitions that are being used and which statistics are being used. Sometimes data may not be representing the full picture due to researcher bias, whether that bias is unconscious or conscious. As an example, take the mean and median of a data set. They might tell a different story if there's a high amount of skew in the data. U.S. salaries, for example, seem very different if you only present one of those statistics. In 2017, the mean average net compensation, according to the Social Security Administration, was $48,000, while the median was $31,500. This is because the people at the high end of the distribution make a lot more money than the people at the low end, and the average becomes skewed toward the high end. You would never know this if I only reported the mean, or if I only reported the median. Additionally, if you only examined the average, $48,000, you might think the average American is doing very well. But when we see the median, $31,500, we now know that 50% of Americans are earning less than that value. This is one reason why you should always ask yourself, am I seeing the whole picture? Or is this just one piece of the puzzle?